The clang of stainless steel echoed relentlessly through the galley of Naval Base Camp Pendleton. It was midday, and the smell of roasting chicken, sautéed vegetables, and strong coffee filled the air, mixing with the tang of industrial cleaners and burnt toast. Ava Mitchell moved among the mess hall tables with meticulous precision, wiping trays that weren't even dirty anymore, organizing stacks of plates as if her life depended on it. And maybe it did. She was new, barely a week into her assignment, but the whispers had already started. The Navy was a small world, and she was the fresh transfer from San Diego no one had asked for. Kitchen duty, that's what they give the weak ones, someone snickered from across the hall. Ava didn't look up. The tray in her hands rattled slightly as her pulse spiked. Let them laugh, they don't know. They probably cried during PT, another voice added, punctuated with a mean chuckle. She gritted her teeth but kept moving, letting the hot steam from the ovens blur her vision just enough to mask the sting behind her eyes. There was a reason she'd requested this duty, and it wasn't because she enjoyed washing dishes. She had a history, something dark and quiet that most people would never guess, something she had spent years burying. The truth was, Ava had survived more than anyone at Camp Pendleton could imagine. She walked through fire, literally and figuratively, and made it out alive. But that was a story for another time. For now, all anyone could see was a girl in a Navy uniform, scrubbing dishes like she belonged nowhere else. As she carried a steaming tray of roasted chicken to the mess hall tables, the usual chatter died down. Something shifted in the air, a subtle tension she could feel before she even saw it. Heavy boots thudded across the floor. 6 men, tall, muscular, exuding a kind of confidence that only comes from years of combat. SEALs. Her stomach dropped. "Oh, look," one of them said, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "The new girl brought food. Guess that's what she's good for." Laughter followed, loud and careless. Not cruel exactly, but with that casual arrogance that digs deeper than any knife. Ava set the tray down and took a step back, hands trembling just enough that she feared someone might notice. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the linoleum floor and vanish, but she couldn't. She wouldn't. Her life had taught her one thing: staying silent was often safer than fighting back. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She turned slightly, trying to see who it was, but the galley was full of moving bodies, carts clanging, voices echoing. Nothing unusual except a shadow approaching from the side entrance, deliberate and impossible to ignore. The man strode in with a presence that seemed to suck the light from the room. Every eye turned toward him, even the SEALs who had been mocking her just moments ago. It was Captain Jackson Reeve, Navy SEAL commander, a legend whispered about in hushed tones on every base from San Diego to Bahrain. He was tall, with shoulders that could crush a man, and eyes that scanned the room like a predator assessing its prey, or perhaps a guardian assessing its charge. And when those eyes landed on Ava, she froze. He knew her. Her hands went rigid around the tray, her breath caught in her throat. Reeve's footsteps were deliberate, slow, calculated, yet every movement screamed danger and authority. He stopped a few feet away from her, the hum of the galley fading into a distant buzz. Even the SEALs seemed to sense it. Their laughter died mid-chuckle, replaced with a tension that made the air feel thick. "Mitchell," he said, voice low, yet it carried across the room. Ava's pulse spiked. "Sir," she replied, almost a whisper. The room seemed to shrink around them. All eyes were on the two of them, but no one dared interrupt the quiet intensity. Reeve didn't ask why she was assigned to kitchen duty. He didn't comment on the whispers or the snickering SEALs. He just looked at her, and in that look was a history that spanned years, memories neither of them had dared speak aloud. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. Ava's heart thudded violently in her chest. "With respect, Captain, I requested this assignment," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know," he said almost to himself. "I approved it." Shock rippled through her. Why would he? Before she could question him further, Reeve leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "To protect you." Her breath caught in her throat. A million thoughts collided at once. Protect her? From what? From whom? She had survived everything once. Why now would she need protection? A tray clattered to the floor behind them, breaking the momentary spell. The seals stiffened, and a few galley staff peeked up from their stations. But Reeve didn't glance away from her. Not once. "Does anyone here know who you are?" he asked. Ava shook her head. "Good," he said, his tone a mix of relief and something she couldn't quite place. "Let's keep it that way." The words offered comfort but also fear. If no one knew who she was, then the secret she'd buried for years was still safe. But how long could it remain so? Before she could respond, a crackling voice over the loudspeaker shattered the fragile calm. "All SEAL teams report to War Room Bravo. Immediate." Chaos erupted. Men dropped trays, grabbed their gear, and sprinted toward the exit. Reeve hesitated, his jaw tight, eyes scanning the room. And then, almost reluctantly, he gave her a look that made her stomach twist. "Ava, stay out of sight. And whatever happens today, don't go near Hangar 4. "Why?" she asked, her curiosity and fear warring for dominance. He opened his mouth, paused, and finally walked away, leaving her alone in the galley with his final words ringing in her ears. "Because the man who put you in that hospital, he's back." A shiver ran down Ava's spine. Her hands went limp, dropping the tray she had been carrying. The clatter echoed louder than the alarms outside. "He's back." The words repeated in her mind, like a drumbeat of impending doom. She had survived him once. Could she survive him again? The galley, once a safe and mundane space, now felt like a trap, a cage, a countdown clock she couldn't stop. And somewhere deep inside, a fire ignited. Ava Mitchell, kitchen duty nobody, overlooked, underestimated, knew her quiet life in the shadows was about to explode. Because this time she couldn't hide, the galley felt suddenly smaller, the air thick with tension as Captain Jackson Reeves' boots clicked against the tile floor. Every head turned to watch him, not out of respect, though there was plenty of that, but because something in his presence made everyone pause, made even seasoned SEALs hesitate mid-step. Ava's pulse hammered in her chest. She tried to steady her breathing, gripping the edge of the counter as if it could anchor her in the moment. "Mitchell," Reeves said again, the word cutting through the murmur of the kitchen staff. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her throat tight. There was no greeting, no pleasantries, just those piercing eyes scanning her as if weighing her life or her worth against some invisible scale. She had known him before, everyone in her past knew him, but this was different. The SEALs who had been mocking her moments ago exchanged uneasy glances. Something was off, something they couldn't put their fingers on. The captain didn't usually concern himself with kitchen staff, let alone a newly assigned logistics girl. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, almost as if speaking the words would make them true. Ava's throat tightened. "Sir, with respect, I requested this assignment." Her voice wavered despite her effort to appear composed. Reeves' expression softened for the briefest of moments, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "I know. I approved it." Shock rippled through Ava. Approved it. That didn't make sense. She had requested kitchen duty precisely because it was low risk, invisible. She wanted to disappear into the background to avoid attention, and yet here he was, approving her request with intention. Before she could ask why, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "To protect you." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her hands shook. "Protect me," she repeated, disbelief lacing her tone. "Yes," he said simply, but the gravity in his voice suggested a history neither of them were ready to speak aloud. "I couldn't risk losing you again." A tray crashed somewhere behind them, startling the galley staff. The SEALs jumped, their laughter now completely gone, and yet Reeves' eyes never left hers. "Does anyone here know who you really are?" he asked. Ava shook her head. "No one can know, not yet." "Good," he murmured. "Keep it that way." Her mind raced. Protect me? Who would want to hurt me here? Why now? The questions barely formed in her head before the loudspeaker crackled, slicing through the tension like a knife. "All SEAL teams report to War Room Bravo. Immediate deployment." The room erupted into controlled chaos. SEALs sprinted to their lockers, securing weapons and tactical gear. Ava froze, torn between running to safety and staying. She wanted answers, but instinct screamed at her to hide. Reeves' gaze shifted toward the exit, and for the first time his expression hardened. His voice was sharp, commanding. "Ava, stay out of sight, and whatever happens today, don't go near Hangar 4. "Why?" she asked, desperation creeping in. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. Then he walked away without another word, leaving a shadow of dread lingering in the galley. Hangar 4. Her chest tightened. Memories she had buried years ago surged like a tidal wave. The alley in Bahrain, the fire, the man with the scar, the hospital bed where she had lain broken, barely alive, and the man who had saved her. Her hands went cold. She knew why Reeve had given that warning, and deep down she knew she couldn't hide forever. The galley staff were already scattering, pushing carts out of the way, carrying trays like their lives depended on it. Ava's eyes followed Reeve as he disappeared into the corridor, commanding attention with every step. His presence made the chaos feel organized, a conductor directing a deadly symphony. Ava's pulse raced. I survived him once, but could I survive him again? She remembered the drive, the encrypted files she had carried on her, files she had promised herself she'd never touch again, hidden in her locker in plain sight. She had survived the initial attack in Bahrain because she had been cautious, smart, silent. But if the man from her past, or anyone connected to him, was here, she wasn't safe anymore. Ava's hands found the edge of her locker, tracing the grooves in the steel like a lifeline. The memory of that night in Bahrain, blood, pain, and the sound of her own ragged breathing flashed across her mind. She had survived the hospital, the endless surgeries, the whispers of pity and doubt. But nothing in those years of quiet recovery had prepared her for today. Footsteps echoed again, closer, heavy, determined. Ava's eyes darted to the side corridor. Someone was approaching fast. Her stomach knotted, but this time it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. The door creaked open. It wasn't a SEAL, not yet. It was someone she never expected to see in uniform again. A shadow fell across her locker. A chill ran down her spine. And before she could react, a voice, low, dangerous, familiar, spoke her name. Ava Mitchell. Her breath caught. "He's back." A shiver ran down her spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that the man who had nearly destroyed her life was here, somewhere on the base, and he was coming for her. Ava's hands tightened around the edge of her locker. Her pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to disappear into the chaos that now consumed the base. But she couldn't, not this time. Because Captain Jackson Reeve, legendary, relentless, impossible, was walking straight toward her, and with him came the past she had spent years trying to bury. And deep down, Ava knew one thing for certain. She was not going to be invisible anymore. The metallic smell of the galley lingered in Ava's nose, mixing with the sharp tang of fear that tightened around her chest like a vice. She pressed her back against a steel shelf in the storage room, trying to steady her breath as chaos roared outside. Alarms shrieked through the base, the distant echo of boots pounding against concrete corridors adding to the tension that made her heart hammer so violently it felt like it would break through her ribcage. "He's back." The words repeated in her mind, each echo a reminder of the night she had spent bleeding on a foreign street, the night she thought she would die and never see the light of day again. Her attacker, the man with the jagged scar across his cheek, the one who had brought her to the brink of death, was here. And she knew why: the secrets she carried, the drive she had hidden, and the truth only she could decode. Ava's hands trembled as she opened her locker, the dull metal scraping softly against her fingertips. Inside was the small, unassuming package she had sworn never to touch again. Her badge. Not her kitchen badge, not her logistics assignment tag, but her old unit insignia and, most importantly, the encrypted hard drive she had carried from Bahrain, hidden, protected, and nearly forgotten in the chaos of her survival. Memories slammed into her like a tidal wave. The dark alley, the fire, the shouting, the blood, and the weight of Captain Jackson Reeve carrying her through the streets to the medevac chopper. Every detail was etched into her mind, burning like embers that refused to die. Ava swallowed hard. She had hidden for years, staying in plain sight, keeping her past and the secrets she carried buried deep. But hiding had never been an option now. Not when the man who had tried to kill her was back, and not when he was looking for her. A sudden sound of boots made her jump. She spun toward the hallway, only to collide with a towering figure in tactical gear. Commander Dalton Briggs. He was Reeves' second in command, a man whose presence alone could silence a room. His eyes narrowed as he took in Ava's pale, tense form. "Mitchell," he said sharply, "you need to get back inside now." Ava shook her head, her resolve hardening. "I need to see him. I need to know why he's here. I need answers." Briggs' jaw tightened. "You don't understand. He didn't come quietly. He asked for you specifically, by name." A cold shiver ran down her spine. The weight of the past pressed against her chest. "He said he has something that belongs to you," Briggs added, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. Ava froze, her stomach knotted. She had known this day might come. She had feared it, prayed it wouldn't. But now reality pressed in on her like the walls of the storage room, confining and suffocating. "Something I thought I'd lost is back in his hands." Her mind raced. She had survived fire, blood, and betrayal once. Could she survive it again? Briggs gestured down the corridor. "If we go now, you'll at least have a chance. But if you step closer to Hangar 4 alone, I can't protect you." Ava took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I can't hide anymore. Not now, not when he's here." Briggs' expression softened slightly, though worry still etched every line of his face. "Fine, but you stay behind me. Understand?" She nodded, her hands trembling with a mix of fear and determination. She was done being invisible, done being underestimated. Together they moved through the corridors, past blinking security panels and through the echoing halls filled with rushing SEALs preparing for deployment. The base felt alive with tension, every sound amplified: the clatter of boots, the hum of the ventilation system, the distant thump of explosives training rounds, but none of it compared to the storm brewing in her chest. The closer they got to Hangar 4, the heavier the air felt. Memories clawed at her mind, dragging her back to that night in Bahrain when fire, blood, and betrayal had marked the beginning of her life's second chapter. She had survived then against all odds. But now, the shadows of the past were no longer confined to memory. They were real, present, and hungry. As they approached the massive steel doors, Ava's pulse spiked. The doors loomed like a mouth ready to swallow anyone who dared enter. Beyond them was a world she thought she had left behind. Briggs keyed in the security code. The lock clicked, a sound that made Ava's stomach flip. The door began to hiss open, revealing the interior of Hangar 4 bathed in harsh fluorescent light. The space had been transformed into an impromptu interrogation area, chairs bolted to the floor, bright lights angled to remove any shadow, cameras recording every inch. And in the center, cuffed but unbowed, stood the man she had feared for years. His jagged scar caught the light, slicing across his cheek like a jagged lightning strike. He smiled. The casual confidence in that smile made Ava's stomach drop. She had seen that expression once before, the one that told her the man was in complete control, that he thrived on chaos. And now he was here, inside her base, unafraid, waiting. Briggs raised his weapon, stepping protectively in front of Ava. "You speak when spoken to," he warned, voice low and tense. The man ignored him, his eyes locked on Ava. "Did they tell you," he said softly, dangerously, "that the captain only saved you because he thought you were someone else?" Ava's breath hitched. "You're lying." He leaned forward, the cuffs rattling with emotion. "Am I? Ask him. Ask Captain Jackson Reeve what he thought he was carrying that night." Briggs stiffened. Mitchell stepped back. But Ava couldn't. Her legs refused to obey. The past, the secrets, the hidden truths, all of it demanded confrontation. The man's voice dropped, a whisper that chilled her to the bone. "Ask him what he lost because he saved you." The distant alarm of an impending breach filled the hangar, lights blinking red as warning sirens screamed. The SEALs had deployed across the base, but the intruders were closer than anyone anticipated. Briggs swore under his breath. "They breached the outer fence, multiple hostiles heading in. We've got to move now." Ava turned toward the exit, every instinct screaming at her to flee, but something anchored her to the spot. Captain Reeve's face appeared in the doorway, his eyes locked on her. "Ava," he shouted, "move." But before she could react, a deafening explosion rocked the hangar, sending a shower of sparks and debris through the air. Dust and smoke clouded her vision. The floor beneath her seemed to tremble. Everything slowed for a fraction of a second. Time seemed elastic, stretching the terror into eternity. And in that terrifying heartbeat, Ava realized something her heart had already known. The past she thought she'd buried was not only alive, it was hungry, it was relentless, and it had come for her. The steel doors of Hangar 4 loomed like a gaping mouth, swallowing the harsh fluorescent lights into shadows that seemed to slither along the concrete floor. Ava Mitchell's heart pounded so loudly it felt like it might rupture her chest. The distant alarms were nothing compared to the storm raging inside her. Every instinct screamed to run, but something primal kept her rooted. The man she had spent years trying to forget was here, somewhere beyond those doors. Briggs' hand on her shoulder was firm, grounding her. "Ava," he hissed, "last warning, step back." "I can't," she whispered. "I have to see him." Briggs' jaw tightened. "Then at least stay behind me. One wrong move and—" He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what it meant. The base was on high alert, and one misstep could get her killed. The doors hissed open. Inside, the hangar had been transformed into a stark arena of intimidation. Interrogation lights turned the space into a sterile hell. Cameras tracked every corner, and chairs bolted to the floor made it look like a prison for giants. Dust hung in the air, mingling with the acrid smell of smoke that had drifted in from the perimeter breach. At the center, cuffed and bloodied, stood him. The scar across his cheek glinted under the fluorescent lights, slicing across his face like a cruel reminder of the man he had been, and the chaos he could still wield. His piercing gaze found hers immediately. Ava's stomach sank. She hadn't just survived him once. She had thought she'd left him behind in the wreckage of her past. But here he was, alive, breathing, and staring at her as if she were the missing piece to some grand, terrifying puzzle. "You shouldn't have come here," Briggs muttered, tightening his grip on her shoulder. The prisoner ignored him, leaning forward despite the restraints. "Mitchell," he said, his voice low, cold, familiar. "You left something behind, something you thought was safe." Ava's breath caught, her pulse spiked, the hard drive, the files, the secrets she'd buried for years. Briggs' voice was sharp, warning, "Don't engage, not now." But Ava couldn't stop herself. Why are you here?" Her voice trembled, but there was steel behind it. "What do you want from me?" A slow, sardonic smile spread across the prisoner's face. "You think it's about me," he chuckled darkly, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. It's about what you carry. Her hands went clammy and she gripped the edge of the nearest table for balance. Memories of Bahrain, the fire, the blood, the screaming, flashed in her mind. She had survived. She had hidden. She had buried the evidence, thinking it would never matter again. But the past had a way of catching up. Briggs stepped forward, raising his weapon. "Back away from her," he barked. But the man's eyes never left Ava. "Ask him," he whispered. "Ask Captain Reeve what he thought he was carrying that night. Ask him what he lost because of you." Ava froze. The words felt like ice water down her spine. She knew the answer, even if she didn't want to. She had carried the secret alone for years, living in shadows, surviving by remaining invisible. But now the man had brought it back into the light. A distant boom shook the hangar. Sparks flew from the overhead lights and debris rained down around them. Red emergency lights bathed the room in a hellish glow. The sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, mingling with the alarms. "They've breached the outer fence," Briggs cursed under his breath. "We've got multiple hostiles heading in. We need to move." Ava's heart raced. The galley, the one place she had felt safe, mundane, invisible, was now a target, and everything she had hidden there might be at risk. Captain Reeve appeared in the doorway, his expression grim, eyes blazing. "Ava, move." But she couldn't, not yet. Her gaze was locked on the prisoner. He was more than a threat, he was a key, a connection to the life she had tried to leave behind. "You were the bait," the prisoner said, almost casually, as if recounting a story. "You carried the drive. You thought you were hiding, but you were protecting them, the wrong people, and now they're coming for you." Ava's breath caught, her pulse thundered. The drive. Briggs swore, turning to cover her. "Captain, what do we do? They're closing in." Reeve didn't answer immediately. His gaze flicked from Ava to the prisoner and back. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to strike, but something in his expression suggested conflict, anger, worry, something deeper she couldn't name. The prisoner leaned back, his cuffs rattling. "You can run," he said, "but it won't matter. They'll find you. They always do." Ava felt her knees weaken, the weight of the past and the imminent danger pressing down on her. She had survived fire, blood, and betrayal before, but this was something different. This was the convergence of her past and present, all in one explosive moment. Another explosion rocked the hangar, shaking the steel walls and sending dust and smoke swirling in the red light. Ava stumbled, barely catching herself on the edge of the table. Briggs shouted, "Move now." But Ava couldn't tear her eyes away from the prisoner. His gaze held her, challenging her, daring her, reminding her of the nights she had spent bleeding, surviving, hiding. And then Reeve stepped forward, finally addressing her directly, his voice low but firm. "Ava, whatever happens, you don't engage alone. Understood?" She nodded, fear and resolve intertwining in her chest. She had hidden for too long. She had survived for too long. And now, for the first time, she realized that the fight she thought was behind her was just beginning. The prisoner's smile widened, almost triumphant. "Run if you must," he said, "but the moment you move, the game begins." Ava swallowed hard, feeling the fire ignite in her chest. She was no longer the girl assigned to kitchen duty, invisible and underestimated. She was a survivor, a carrier of secrets that could topple lives, and the key to a dangerous truth that threatened everyone around her. And somewhere deep in the shadows, she knew the man who had once tried to destroy her was counting on her next move. The deafening alarms of Camp Pendleton's hangar shook every fiber of Ava Mitchell's body. Red emergency lights strobed across the concrete, reflecting off the polished steel of tactical equipment abandoned in the chaos. Smoke curled upward from a small fire near the far end of Hangar 4, black ribbons twisting like fingers reaching toward the ceiling. Ava's pulse thudded in rhythm with the explosions outside. Every nerve screamed at her to run, yet something anchored her to the spot, her past, her secret, the man who had haunted her nightmares. "Move!" Captain Jackson Reeves' voice cut through the din, commanding, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Ava obeyed, but not without a backward glance. The prisoner's grin had widened into something sinister, a predator's smile, and she felt the weight of every memory from Bahrain pressing down on her chest. He had survived. He had planned. And now he had brought the war to her doorstep. Briggs stepped ahead, weapon drawn, eyes scanning the perimeter for threats. "Multiple breaches," he shouted. "Hostiles entering through the south gate, containment's failing." Ava's stomach dropped. The galley, the mess hall, everything she had once considered mundane and safe, was now a battlefield, and she was right in the middle of it. "Get to cover," Reeve barked. He pulled her behind a stack of steel crates just as a fusillade of gunfire erupted from the south entrance. Sparks danced off the walls as bullets pinged against the metal. Ava's hands shook. She had trained for situations like this, but never like this. Not with her past threatening to collide violently with her present. Not with the man who had nearly killed her standing just beyond the bright lights of the interrogation area. One of the intruders, masked, heavily armed, moving with practiced precision, slammed against a barricade, spraying bullets into the hangar. Briggs returned fire, each shot echoing with authority. Ava ducked instinctively, feeling the floor vibrate beneath her as another explosion rocked the building. "You need to move now," Reeves shouted, dragging her along. They darted behind a shipping container, the shadows making Ava feel almost invisible in the chaos. But invisibility wasn't enough anymore. The man from her past had eyes everywhere, and she knew he would not let her escape so easily. The prisoner, even cuffed, moved with unnerving calm. "You think you're safe," he sneered, voice echoing through the hangar. "You think hiding behind Captain Reeve will save you, but every choice you've made led you here. And now," he gestured toward the south entrance, where gunfire and smoke mingled into a wall of chaos, "now you must face it." Ava's stomach churned. Every memory from Bahrain, the fire, the screaming, the blood flooded back. She had survived. She had hidden. But the man had returned with vengeance in his eyes, and this time she wasn't alone. Yet she felt exposed, a target in the crosshairs of history. "Cover me," Reeve barked, signaling Briggs to flank. The SEALs moved with the fluidity of shadows, suppressing the attackers and securing the perimeter as Ava ducked behind the container, gripping her own sidearm. Her hands were steady, despite the chaos, because training met necessity, and necessity met survival. A shot rang out, ricocheting dangerously close. Ava's heart jumped, but she steadied her aim. Her eyes scanned, calculating trajectories, anticipating movement, every instinct honed over years of survival flaring to life. "On me!" Reeve's voice snapped her out of her spiraling thoughts. They moved as a unit, Ava, Reeve, and Briggs weaving between shadows, crates, and overturned equipment. Bullets splintered steel, sparks flew, and somewhere in the chaos, a second explosion shook the hangar. Through the haze, Ava glimpsed him, her attacker, free of the cuffs, moving with the precision and confidence of a predator. His eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, time slowed. Memories and fear collided with adrenaline and determination. "You," she hissed under her breath. He smirked, almost mocking. "You survived once, but can you survive this?" Briggs shouted a warning, but Ava ignored it. Every muscle tensed as she drew her sidearm, fingers trembling on the trigger. She had trained for combat, but this was personal. This was survival, vengeance, and fear all rolled into one. The man lunged forward, and Ava fired instinctively. Her bullet struck the metal wall just behind him with a deafening ping. He didn't flinch. The smirk on his face widened. Reeve stepped forward, intercepting him, fists and military precision meeting raw intent. Ava ducked, rolled behind a crate, and counted the seconds between explosions, gunfire, and her own racing heartbeat. Every movement in the hangar was a symphony of chaos. Sparks, bullets, shouted commands, the roar of engines outside. The base was under siege, but Ava felt something she hadn't felt in years, alive, focused, dangerous. "Get back!" Briggs shouted as another masked figure approached. Ava fired again, this time disabling the intruder with precise aim. Her training, her instincts, her memories, all converged into this moment of pure intensity. And then from the shadows the prisoner laughed. It was low, guttural, confident. "You think this is over. It's only just begun. Everything you've survived, everything you've hidden, it ends tonight." Ava's blood ran cold, but something fierce ignited inside her. She had survived fire, betrayal, and death before. She had hidden in plain sight. She had endured, and now she would fight. Reeves' eyes met hers across the hangar. For the first time, she saw something unspoken in them: trust, recognition, and an unyielding belief in her strength. Ava tightened her grip on her weapon, her legs braced, and her mind sharpened. The storm of bullets, fire, and chaos surrounded them, but this time she was not running. She was standing. She was ready. And the man from her past, smirking in the chaos, had no idea just how far Ava Mitchell had come since Bahrain. The deafening roar of gunfire and explosions echoed through Hangar 4, rattling the steel beams and sending a rain of sparks cascading from the ceiling. Smoke hung in thick clouds, suffocating and blinding, yet Ava Mitchell moved with uncanny precision. Every step was deliberate, every movement measured. The kitchen girl everyone had laughed at was gone. She had become a survivor, a soldier, a woman forged in fire and fear. Captain Jackson Reeve led the charge, his presence commanding, his eyes scanning for threats as he protected her like a shield. Beside him, Briggs moved with lethal efficiency, his weapon carving arcs of suppression fire, ensuring Ava's path remained relatively clear. But the hangar was chaos incarnate. Intruders surged like shadows, bullets ricocheting off metal crates, sparks igniting small fires, and alarms screeching an unrelenting warning. Through the haze, Ava saw him, the man who had haunted her nightmares, the one she thought she had left behind. The jagged scar across his cheek caught the flickering red lights, making him look more predator than human. His eyes were locked on hers, smoldering with recognition and malice. "You shouldn't have come back," Ava shouted, raising her weapon. Her voice trembled slightly, but her grip was steady. Every memory of Bahrain, every whisper of fear, every scar she had endured fueled her determination. He tilted his head, smirking. "I didn't come back for you," he said. The words sent a chill down her spine. "I came back for what you stole, what you hid, and tonight I'm taking it all back." Ava's mind raced. The drive, the files, the secrets she had buried, he had been hunting them all along. Every step of her new life, every moment of apparent safety, had been under the shadow of his pursuit. Reeve stepped forward, blocking the man's path, fists clenched, eyes blazing. "Not tonight," he growled. The man laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the hangar. "You saved her once," he said, voice dripping with venom. "But that doesn't mean she belongs to you. This is her reckoning." Ava's pulse quickened. The prisoner's words were meant to unnerve her, but they did more than that. They ignited something deep inside her, the fire she had buried under years of silence and survival. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about reclaiming her life, facing the nightmare she had fled, and finally confronting the man who had tried to erase her. "Stay back," Reeve barked, raising his weapon. "She doesn't need you to fight this." Ava shook her head, determination hardening every line of her body. "I've survived everything else," she said through gritted teeth. "I can survive this." The man lunged suddenly, moving faster than anyone could anticipate. Ava reacted instinctively, sidestepping and firing a precise shot that grazed his shoulder. Sparks flew as the bullet hit metal, and he staggered slightly but didn't fall. He grinned, a predator's smirk. "Better than I remembered," he said, circling her like a wolf assessing its prey. Briggs fired suppressive rounds, forcing him to retreat, but the man's focus never wavered from Ava. Every movement, every calculated step, reminded her of the terror she had endured years ago. But this time, she was ready. Ava's training, her instinct, and the relentless will to survive fused into a single purpose. She ducked behind a crate, rolled, and fired again, hitting him squarely in the shoulder. He stumbled, but when he turned, his eyes burned with recognition. He remembered her. He remembered every scar, every moment she had survived. "You," he spat, "you think hiding makes you safe." "I'm not hiding," Ava said, her voice rising over the chaos. "I'm standing, I'm fighting, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." The words seemed to hang in the smoke-filled air, charged with raw defiance. Reeves' eyes softened slightly, a mixture of pride and concern, as he watched Ava confront the nightmare that had shadowed her for years. The prisoner lunged again, and this time Ava met him head-on. The fight was brutal, instinctual, a dance of survival. She ducked under his swing, countering with a strike that sent him staggering. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off the walls, but she didn't falter. Every move was precise, calculated, a testament to years of training and survival. For the first time, the man hesitated, recognition flickering in his eyes. He had underestimated her. She was no longer the terrified girl from Bahrain. She was a force to be reckoned with, a storm contained in human form. "Enough games," he snarled, swinging again. Ava ducked, rolled, and pushed back, forcing him against the crates. "This ends now," she said firmly. Her voice carried through the hangar, echoing in the chaos like a declaration. Reeves stepped beside her, weapons raised, ready to intervene. But Ava didn't need him. She had taken the first decisive step. The fire in her chest, the memory of survival, and the years of preparation had culminated in this moment. The man's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of fear, or perhaps respect, crossing his face. For the first time, Ava saw vulnerability in him, a crack in the armor he had built around his malevolence. Before he could react further, another explosion rocked the hangar, sending debris flying. The floor shuddered beneath them. Ava and Reeve rolled to cover as smoke and dust filled the air, choking the space with tension and fear. In that instant, Ava realized something profound. The man she had feared for years, the predator who had haunted her past, was no longer invincible. He was human, and so was she. She took a deep breath, steadying herself amid the chaos. The fight was far from over, but she had found her strength, her resolve, and her courage. For the first time in years, Ava Mitchell was no longer the girl assigned to kitchen duty. She was a survivor. She was a fighter. And she was ready to reclaim everything the man had tried to take from her. The chaos in Hangar 4 had reached a fever pitch. Smoke choked the air, punctuated by the deafening staccato of gunfire, the crunch of metal under booted feet, and the low rumble of distant explosions that made the concrete tremble beneath Ava Mitchell's feet. Every instinct screamed survival, yet she didn't run. She faced the storm head-on, her sidearm steady in her hands, eyes locked on the man who had haunted her nightmares for years. Captain Jackson Reeve moved like a shadow beside her, precise, lethal, and unyielding. He was a human wall, guarding her with a presence that demanded attention. Beside him, Briggs provided suppression fire, covering angles and moving like a predator in perfect synchronization. But the real battle was Ava's. Her past and present collided violently in this hangar, and she was determined to take control of her destiny. The man, scarred, dangerous, relentless, lunged again. Sparks flew as a stray bullet hit the steel crates, showering the space with glowing fragments. His eyes locked on Ava, burning with obsession, rage, and something darker. "You've grown," he hissed, voice low and venomous. "But it's too late, you can't hide from what's coming." Ava's pulse raced, but she answered, her voice cutting through the smoke-filled air like a blade. "I'm not hiding, I'm standing, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." The words seemed to strike him. For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. He had underestimated her. She wasn't the terrified girl from Bahrain anymore. She was precise, focused, and unrelenting. Every movement, every breath was survival honed into skill. Suddenly, a series of muffled bangs echoed from the hangar's south entrance. Reinforcements, more intruders heavily armed, were pushing into the base. The hangar's chaos escalated. Bullets pinged off walls, crates toppled, and sparks rained from the damaged ceiling. The storm outside mirrored the one inside, a tempest of fire, smoke, and raw danger. Reeve barked orders. Ava, move to the eastern side, we'll funnel them. But Ava didn't move yet. Her eyes remained locked on the prisoner. She needed answers before this ended. She needed the truth he had tried to bury along with her. "You came back for me," she said, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. "But why? Why now?" He smiled, dark and dangerous. "I didn't come for you. I came for what you took, the drive, the files, everything you thought you buried, and I'm going to finish what I started." Ava's stomach twisted. The drive, the encrypted files from Bahrain that she had hidden all these years, contained secrets powerful enough to topple governments, destroy lives, and ignite chaos. She had survived to keep them safe, but now they were at risk. Another explosion rocked the hangar, sending her sprawling against a steel crate. Sparks rained down like molten rain, and smoke filled her lungs. She coughed, vision blurred, but her resolve sharpened. She could not fail, not now, not when everything she had fought for was at stake. The prisoner lunged again, and this time Ava met him with controlled fury. She sidestepped, rolled, and fired a precise shot that hit his shoulder. He stumbled but regained his balance, eyes burning with fury and recognition. "You've changed," he hissed. "Stronger, smarter, more dangerous." "Stronger enough to stop you," Ava replied, her voice unwavering. Reeve and Briggs moved in perfect coordination, cutting off the prisoner's retreat while taking down the intruders flooding the hangar. The space had become a chessboard of bullets, smoke, and steel, with each move lethal, each decision critical. Then it happened, a loud crash from above. The mezzanine walkway, weakened by prior explosions, began to collapse. Metal groaned, dust filled the air, and Ava instinctively pulled Reeve and Briggs back, rolling just as the walkway came down in a shower of sparks and debris. The prisoner took advantage of the momentary distraction. He lunged toward Ava with alarming speed, reaching for something. A flash drive clipped to her belt. Ava twisted, firing her weapon with precision. The shot grazed his arm, forcing him back. She grabbed the drive, heart pounding, holding it tight like a lifeline. "You won't take it," she growled. "Not again." His eyes narrowed. "You've survived everything, but can you survive me?" The hangar shook as another explosion tore through the southern gate. Reinforcements clashed with intruders outside, gunfire echoing through the steel walls. Ava's hands were steady, but her mind raced. She needed a plan, a way to end this without losing herself or the drive. Reeve's voice cut through the chaos. "Ava, we need to move now." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to obey, to retreat with the SEALs, to survive. But she couldn't leave him, couldn't leave the man who had tried to destroy her past lurking in the chaos. Not until she confronted him. She raised her weapon again, firing with precision, forcing him back step by step. Sparks flew from ricocheting bullets as he faltered for the first time. "You underestimate me," he growled. "No," Ava replied, her eyes blazing. "You underestimated what I've survived, what I can survive." The prisoner's confidence wavered, just for a moment, but it was enough. Reeve lunged forward, tackling him to the ground with brutal efficiency. Ava rolled beside them, keeping the intruders at bay as Briggs secured the perimeter. For the first time in years, Ava saw him vulnerable, not defeated but human. He wasn't invincible. He hadn't counted on her. She had changed. She had grown stronger. She pressed the drive to her chest, her heart hammering. She had survived fire, blood, betrayal, and near-death before. And now, in the chaos of Hangar 4, she realized something vital. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was taking control. Ava looked at Reeve, who nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her courage, her strength, her survival. The hangar was still a battlefield, smoke curling, fires burning. But in that moment, Ava Mitchell felt a spark of triumph, a glimmer of victory. She had faced her past, faced the man who had haunted her, and had survived. But the war wasn't over. The intruders still loomed. The drive was still a target, and somewhere in the shadows, the man she had faced was already planning his next move. Ava tightened her grip on the drive. She had survived the storm, but the reckoning was far from finished. The hangar had become a war zone. Smoke choked the air, sparks fell like embers from the ceiling, and the deafening echoes of gunfire and explosions rattled every steel beam. Hangar 4, once a place of storage and routine, had transformed into the stage for a reckoning that Ava Mitchell could no longer avoid. Ava's pulse hammered in her chest as she crouched behind the last remaining crates, the encrypted drive clutched tightly to her chest. Captain Jackson Reeve moved beside her, every movement precise, every command cutting through the chaos. Briggs flanked them, weapons ready, eyes scanning for the next threat. "You've got the drive," Reeve said, his voice steady but urgent. "We need to get it out before they regroup." Ava nodded, heart still racing. "I won't let him take it," she said. Her voice carried more steel than she expected, more courage than she felt. "Not after everything." Outside the hangar, the sounds of battle raged, reinforcements clashing with intruders, the shouts of SEALs mixing with the screams of those trying to flee. But inside, it had become personal. The man who had haunted her past was still alive, still dangerous, still smirking at the chaos he had orchestrated. He stepped from the shadows, unbound but cautious, blood staining his clothes. The jagged scar across his cheek caught the strobe of the emergency lights, and his eyes bore into Ava's with a predator's focus. "You've survived so far," he said, voice low, dangerous. "But it ends here. Hand over the drive and I might let you walk away. Resist," his grin widened, "and you die." Ava's stomach clenched. For years she had carried the weight of this moment, the terror, the memory of Bahrain, the hidden secrets. But she was no longer the scared girl he had once tried to kill. She was a fighter. She was a survivor. She had grown stronger than even she realized. "No," she said, voice firm. "I've survived you once, I'll survive you again, and I'm not letting you take this." The man's grin faltered for the first time. He lunged, moving faster than humanly possible. Ava rolled behind a crate, firing a precise shot that clipped his shoulder. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off metal crates, showering the space with a deadly light show. Reeve tackled him to the ground, fists and calculated force meeting raw aggression. The man fought back, grunting, twisting, trying to free himself. But Ava had learned. She had prepared. She moved with lethal precision, striking, shooting, and forcing him further back until he was cornered against the wall. "You underestimated me," Ava said, stepping forward, the drive secure against her chest. "And that was your mistake." His eyes flickered with fear, recognition, and something else, respect perhaps. You've changed," he admitted, voice strained. "I've survived," Ava said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "I'm done hiding, I'm done running, and you're not taking this from me." Outside, the reinforcements had begun to secure the hangar. SEALs moved like shadows, neutralizing intruders and gaining control of the chaos. Briggs moved to cover Ava's flank, but she barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on the man who had terrorized her past. Ava pressed forward. With one swift motion, she disabled him, sending him sprawling to the ground. He groaned, clutching his arm where her bullet had grazed him, his strength no longer enough to overcome her skill and determination. Reeve stood, weapon lowered slightly, watching her. "You did it," he said, voice low. "You faced him, you survived." Ava exhaled, her chest heaving. She had done more than survive. She had reclaimed control. The drive was safe, the threat neutralized, for now, and she had finally confronted the man who had haunted her every memory. She looked down at him, the man who had caused so much pain, and felt a strange mix of triumph and pity. "This ends," she said softly. "Not with you controlling my life anymore, not with fear dictating my every move. This ends now." He glared at her but said nothing. Defeated, cornered, and exposed, he realized that the girl he had tried to destroy was no longer afraid. She was stronger than he had ever imagined. The hangar had quieted slightly as the reinforcements secured the perimeter. Smoke still hung heavy in the air and fires still smoldered, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. Ava and Reeve moved toward the exit, Briggs covering them, every step careful, deliberate. Outside, the night air hit Ava like a balm, crisp and cold. The base was alive with activity, the aftermath of the attack still visible, but she felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. She had survived, yes, but more than that, she had reclaimed her life. Reeve walked beside her, eyes scanning the horizon. "You handled yourself well," he said, a hint of admiration in his tone. "Not many could have done what you just did." Ava nodded, gripping the drive tightly. "I had to," she said simply. "For me, and for everyone this secret could hurt if it fell into the wrong hands." He glanced at her, a rare, approving smile breaking his usual stoicism. "You're more than I ever expected, more than anyone expected." Ava's mind drifted briefly to all she had endured: the fire, the blood, the betrayal, the long years of hiding. And now she felt the weight lift slightly. She had faced her nightmare. She had survived the impossible. But deep down, she knew this was just one battle in a larger war. Secrets like the ones she carried rarely stayed buried. And somewhere out there, shadows were always waiting, always watching. For the first time, though, Ava felt ready. She had faced death, betrayal, and her worst fears, and she had won. The man who had tried to destroy her would be remembered not as a victor, but as a ghost of her past. And Ava Mitchell, once underestimated, laughed at, and sent to the kitchen, would step forward as a survivor, a warrior, and someone no one would ever underestimate again. As she walked into the night, the drive secure, her body still trembling with adrenaline, Ava felt a sense of closure and empowerment she had never known. She had stared down her past, faced it, and emerged stronger. Captain Reeve fell into step beside her, silent but vigilant, a steady presence in the aftermath of chaos. Ava looked at him, a mixture of gratitude, respect, and unspoken understanding passing between them. "Whatever comes next," she said quietly, "I'm ready." He nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "So am I." And as the base settled into tense quiet, smoke curling against the cold night sky, Ava Mitchell finally realized. She had survived the storm, conquered her past, and reclaimed her life.